Oh, it would be my great pleasure. I've been a fan of Marilee Adams for a long time now, have her latest books, and I'm really excited that we can bring her to BACN. So let me tell you about her. Marilee Adams, PhD, is an award-winning author and pioneer in the fields of inquiry-based coaching, leadership, and organizational culture. She is the CEO and founder of the Inquiry Institute. She's a consultant for organizations large and small, an affiliate instructor for Weatherhead Executive Education at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. And for 10 years was an adjunct professor of leadership in the School of Public Affairs at American University. Dr. Adams is the best-selling author of Change Your Questions, Change Your Life, 12 Powerful Tools for Leadership, Coaching, and Results. And the fourth edition just dropped this summer, and with it, a Change Your Questions, Change Your Life workbook as well. I've got them both. Yay. She's also the author of other publications, including, where it is, The Art of the Question and Teaching That Changes Lives, or excuse me, yeah, that's it. So even Change Your Questions, Change Your Life, a quick read business and relationship fable, is an international bestseller and a standard part of the curriculum in many leadership development and coach training programs of hers now, or really of theirs around the world. It's also widely used for team and organizational change. So without further ado, please, let's welcome Marilee Adams, Dr. Adams. Yay.
Hi, everybody. Please, it's Marilee. And I really enjoyed the first hour of being with you all today, and it gave me some new things to say. First of all, during the break, I got rid of my coffee and got warm water. Thank you, Craig. And got a lozenge. So that was a real extra. And I really love that we started, Harry, that you started with mindsets, because we're going to be working a lot with mindsets today, and you gave a perfect setup for what we're going to be diving into later. So, and I feel like just being among consultants and is exactly where I love to be. So I do have a few things to say before we get to that purpose slide. So Craig said that I consult with organizations large and small, which I do. And I'm just going to mention that in the context of mindsets, because some of our recent clients have been the Federal Reserve Board and Department of Humans, DHS, Homeland Security, and Expedia, and companies that literally have come to us because they're interested in altering their mindsets, not just of the individuals there, but the mindsets of teams and of the culture. So, and we'll be able to talk about some of that, because I'm sure that some of you might be curious about that. It's so interesting when you think about what does it mean to be a consultant. Many people use the term trusted advisor, which is a wonderful term. The challenge with it is that a trusted advisor, it sounds like we are the answer people. People come to us with their problems. We give us wisdom from on high with their great answers, and then, life just works out. And of course, that's not really the way it works best. So part of my job today, okay, I'll do the purpose.
I keep jumping the gun. I'm sorry.
That's right. I'll let you know. How about that?
Even better.
Yeah, Craig is running the slides for me today, which is very lazy of me, but I'm very appreciative of it. So I'll just tell you, Craig, we have a front stage, backstage relationship here. So whether you think of yourself as an answer person, and is the whether you do or not, your clients probably do, and your prospective clients really do. And part of what I want to do today is turn that on its head, because I think we're most powerful and effective and empowering of our clients' success when we're question people, because you really can't get to the best answers without the best questions. So I even used the term inquiring consultant in the same sense I use the term inquiring leader. So I want to position question asking is an essential skill for consultants. Also, mindset management as an essential skill for consultants, which we're going to be moving into very directly. And really, I hope some of my own question nerdiness rubs off because I'm just so in love with questions and inquiry and the possibilities that can ensue from that cannot ensue from simply making statements and giving answers. And I want to mention something, since we've been talking about mindset already, that we're going to be working with the mindset distinctions that are in all my books and that I use in my trainings and speaking and all. But many of you may be also aware of Carol Dweck's work on mindsets, which is really excellent work. And so it just occurred to me during this first hour that it would be useful. So Carol Dweck's organization has a newsletter, and they interviewed me about my work in mindsets. And so, Craig, I'll send that to you afterwards, and then you can share it with people, because it might expand some of the possibilities of how you think about mindsets. So now, Craig, ta-da, we can go to the formal purpose, which is introduced in inquiry-based perspectives and tools to bolster your skills in empowering client success and satisfaction. I do want to add one thing. In terms of the format and protocol for today, we're not going to be doing breakout rooms. We will be doing a lot of chat interactions. So there'll be a couple times when I say, let's take a reflection minute, and that means literally a minute to do some written reflections. But I do expect that you have questions you might want to ask or add something. And so we'll dance together, because that's the way it always works anyway. So I do have an orienting question, and Craig, you could move that slide. What are your biggest challenges in empowering client success and satisfaction? So take 1 minute, and I'm going to time it, to write down as many challenges as you can. And then after that minute, I'm going to ask you to chat in one that is biggest for you. And the reason I'm doing this, by the way, is I want to manage what I say in response to what are your biggest challenges, so that it's relevant and not just like abstract and cognitive. So let's see, getting my cell phone to do this. And your biggest challenges, it could be with the past client or a current one. Just a few more seconds. I think I'll take a sip of warm water. Okay, so if you would kindly put in chat one challenge that's big for you. Family, business. I want to see these. So let's see. Forging a new relationship with my childhood wait a minute, not make, it's moving fast, not make assumptions about what my client needs or wants. Oh, people expect change to happen fast. That's amusing, isn't it? Let's see. To help clients recognize that what is in the way of changing is blocked energy that needs to move to be able to go forward. Educating potential clients that successful retirement from their business requires much more planning and execution than just deciding who to sell to. And educating potential clients could be about a whole bunch of things. And it has to do with expectations. We'll see if there is one more. Understanding how marketing research can apply to their business challenges. That's a real value add. Okay, so let's put all of that in the context of question asking. And what we're going to do next is I want to look at the reasons that people ask questions. It may seem like it's intuitively obvious, but it may not be. So, Craig, if you'll put up the first slide about reasons to ask questions, and I'm going to ask you to read it, just so there's some variation in voice for what people are hearing.
All right, from the top, reasons to ask questions. Number one, gathering information.
Oh, Craig, I'm going to actually, let me stop you for a second. Sorry.
Sure.
As you all listen to Craig, I want you to listen with the question, is this function of asking questions important to me to be in order to serve the success of my clients? So as he reads each one, you can ask yourself, is this relevant? Is this relevant? Is this relevant? And obviously I have a point to make here.
Okay. There's 9 on this slide. So hopefully I'll use the right pause in between. Gathering information, build and maintain relationships, communicate and have conversations, learn and teach, reflect, think critically, creatively, and strategically, search for and challenge assumptions, make decisions and choices, make requests.
Okay, and then there are 8 on the next slide.
Great. Continuing on, resolve problems and create solutions, evaluate, assess, and critique, set and accomplish goals, clarify and confirm listening, negotiate and resolve conflicts, focus attention, create and innovate, open new possibilities, catalyze productive and accountable conversations in action.
Thank you. And can we go back on gallery so we can talk together about this?
Certainly. Let me just stop the share.
Okay, so the first thing is, in terms of listening with the question, is this question function important for me as a consultant? What did you discover? How many of you discovered that all of them or most of them were important? Just raise your hand. And you could go off, I mean, you're all on mute, but any observations about that? Yeah, Herb.
Yeah, I they all fall under the heading of empathy. In cognitive behavioral therapy, the most important thing is to ask questions so the person you're dealing with feels cared about. And with clients, they're clients.
Thank you. And I'm going to add something because I can't resist. So just so you know, my book, The Art of the Question, is a cognitive behavioral psychology textbook. I just hit my microphone. And I want to put in a plug for not just empathy, but for operationalizing what comes across as empathy, because a lot of what we're going to work with today is operationalizing thinking in such a way that we can manage it better and change it, which also changes the outcome of everything. So Herb, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any observations? Don?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would add one more to that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I would add one more to that, and that's questions can help whoever you're talking to get outside the boxes that they put themselves in. My ultimate belief is there are no boxes to get outside of, but your clients or whoever you're talking to isn't there. So questions can help them move outside whatever the boxes are they've built for themselves.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple comments here. One, I do mentoring with SCORE, and it's what you're showing here, Marilee, is kind of a detailed version of the training that we go through as mentors from a needs assessment and questioning standpoint. You kind of start with a clean slate and really put yourself in very much of a listening mode. And then personally, I can't possibly design the right kind of market research study without asking a lot of very detailed questions about the business and their objectives. So I can't even start without doing kind of what you're talking about.
Great. Actually, most of us can't, but that doesn't mean we haven't distinguished it as a specific skill with ways to think about it. And I love that you brought in mentoring and coaching, because asking questions and from a particular mindset is basic to both. Okay, Deborah, and then we're going to move on, because we could just talk together the whole time, but I have a lot of material to share.
I bet. I can't wait. So for me, what I recognize is that asking the questions at the beginning of a connection with someone, whether it's be individual or a full group, is it allows those folks to recognize the possibilities of what they can receive. And at the same time, get them to the environment of what are the possibilities that they may not have even fully recognized that what they're experiencing could potentially be as a result of something else.
Right.
So it opens up the whole realm of, they may be seeing me for physical issue, but then there's a lot of mental, emotional spaces also being taken up. And if they can open up the possibilities, a whole lot can be addressed.
Right.
Without question.
Absolutely. And it will follow how we frame it. And of course, the questions we ask are part of framing.
Yeah.
So Craig, let's go to the next slide, and then I'm going to riff on it.
Excellent. Here we go.
So we've just looked at the importance of asking questions and recognizing that almost, in fact, everything we do in a way comes from questions that we're asking others or questions we're asking ourselves. And but I also want to position this slide that says the result of missed questions. And so something that we don't typically think about is that every question missed is a potential crisis waiting to happen. Every question missed is a potential possibility for empowering your client that you may never know about because of asking questions or not asking questions. And I'm going to give you an example of that.
Before you do, Craig, you're actually sharing presenter mode, so maybe just check.
I am? Wow, okay. Yeah. I will swap it. That just started, Ulrika?
No, it's still on the other one.
That's crazy. Okay, because on my screen, now is it just?
You need to stop sharing and reshare the presenter, the
slide mode.
Slide mode.
Got it.
I love it. This feels like a big family. Everybody's helping each other out.
We make it work.
We've done this for a while.
I can tell. I mean, you feel that way.
That's good.
but here, I want to give you an example of something that could be problematic for us as consultants in missing questions. So most of you probably know what the Myers-Briggs is. And but if you don't, it's not that urgent. But let's just say that some people are more people and emotionally oriented, and some people are more data and thinking oriented. So let's say you've been asked as a consultant to come in and work with whoever because they have a big problem, and you need to understand what that problem is. If you are a people-oriented person, you may not ask questions that are in the realm of data and information, or as many as you need to, because that's not your primary orientation. But if you miss some, but it could be that where that individual or that team or that company's problem is in data and information, and your questions are mostly in people and relationship, you're going to miss something really important. Conversely, if you're a person who is more data and information oriented, but the real problem here has to do with relationships, communications, et cetera, it may not occur to you to ask those kinds of questions. So what that argues for is thinking about where that company, where that team, where that individual or your client is coming from, and recognizing that you may have to alter how you think in order to ask the questions that will get you the information that you need in order to be most helpful to them. So that's just, something to keep in the back of your mind. The next slide has one of my favorite quotes from Einstein. And again, you can think of what I'm doing right now as an ambassador, an enthusiastic ambassador for power of questions. And just as a sidebar, we're mostly going to be talking about questions, interpersonal questions, ones we ask each other. There's a whole realm of question asking that I call question thinking, and that is that we think with questions. So I'm going to put both of those in context with this quote. He said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I'd spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. For if I knew the proper questions, I could solve that problem in less than 5 minutes." This is the opposite of what people would think of as a trusted advisor, the person with the answers. And what we're doing here is focusing in on the importance of questions. And in this quote, he's implying, at least this is what I think, I haven't asked him, but I think he's implying questions we ask others, but also questions that we ask ourselves. And I want to put that now in the context of change. So I'm going to show you a model called Creating New Futures. Craig, that's so in this model, you'll see that results are on the perpendicular side, time is on the horizontal side, and that wavy line that you see represents some kind of ongoing situation. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, but it's pretty much within a band. Now, another quote by Einstein, insanity consists of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I'm modifying that to insanity could consist of asking the same questions over and over and expecting different answers. Typically, that will not happen. So I want to position this inside of what are the problems or issues that clients or potential clients come to us with. And I will say that my strong guess is that they are living inside questions that are not getting them the results they want, and they don't know how to create new questions. You see where that circle is, because only new questions are going to lead them to new futures. And we've had a few mentions here today of coaching and, well, obviously of consulting. So the questions that we ask our clients are the ones that can help them develop new thinking to get out of the paradigm where, or the box, as you also mentioned, where they are. And I would say that the best way to get people out of the box where they are is to ask them a question that requires that they answer it from outside of where they've typically been thinking. And so if you want to help a client develop a different future and different results than the ones they're already getting, then asking them questions is what really can help us do that. And what that argues for is getting really facile and frequent with the questions that we think with and the questions that we ask them. So that's just a very quickie about, so Marilee will need to add that quote to her presentation, whatever it was I just said. But thank you, Diane. You can tell me about that later. So just a word about question thinking, which we're not going to go into deeply, but part of my work depends on recognizing that the way that we think is actually an internal question and answer process. And what we typically think is a thought is actually an answer to a preceding question. If we can discern the question that we're thinking with, then we also can develop the ability to assess the utility of that question and to wonder whether different questions could serve our goals better. And so that's part of what's wrapped into creating new futures. And that's all we're going to do with question thinking at the moment. But we're going to segue now into mindsets. So I want to show you the choice map. Thank you, Craig. You did that perfectly. And this is a model that's actually in all of my work. And it describes two mindsets that we all have. One is learner mindset. One is judger mindset. And I'm just going to make a few comments about this because we're going to be using it later. So there's some things to note about the choice map. It illustrates much of what we're going to be diving into, and I'm going to be providing an experience about mindsets in a minute. It illustrates, notice that in the thought bubbles, they're all questions, and they're questions that are first person singular. In other words, they're in the format of question thinking. And you'll also notice that the questions on the learner path and the questions on the judger path are very different. And because the questions we ask lead to how we think, how we feel, how we relate, how we behave, and the results we get, that those questions, whether they are learner or judger, are going to have a huge impact on what happens next. So, and I'm going to make a few more comments about the choice map. You can think of it as a self-awareness, self-coaching, and also mindfulness tool. Notice that at the top, it says we choose moment by moment. So the choice map is actually a snapshot in time. It's not a video. And at any moment, we can simply ask ourselves, what mindset am I in? And then how can I change that? And we're going to do something specific about switching mindsets. Also, I want you to notice that the learner path goes off the page, and that's intentional, because when we're in learner mindset, we're more creative, we're more innovative, we're more generative, and we can think and behave in ways that lead to different solutions and futures than what would have happened anyway, which is why people hire us. They want that. And when we're in judger mindset, the future, as you notice in the famous judger pit, And by the way, we've all been in the judger pit many times. Every one of us gets very muddy. But the future, when we're in judger, or a team is in judger, or strategically we're doing something, but everybody or most people in judger, somehow the solutions and possibilities are going to be some kind of recycle from the past. So in terms of where we want to go, being able to tell whether we're a learner or a judger and then what to do with that can make a huge difference. Now I'm going to reference back to the clients that I mentioned in the beginning, and I'll just sort of pick on the Federal Reserve Board, which is the board. It's not the banks, it's the board that's in Washington. And a number of them had read Change Your Questions, had been playing with this material actively for a while. And they realized that they wanted to bring it into the board because specifically they wanted individuals, teams, and the culture to be learner rather than judger, and learner in a predictable, reliable way. And so I did a bunch of workshops there. We've had some of their people come train with us so they could take the material into the board. And years later, they're still doing it. And so we don't have a lot of time today to talk about culture, but you could just imagine the difference between a learner culture and a judger culture. And that will be easier to imagine when we get more deeply into the mindsets. I also have one more theoretical note because I love being able to talk to people who love theory. That the question thinking as represented on the choice map and in the model of what I work with is really a theory of wholeness. It presumes that we are all interconnected and interdependent, and you can hear systems thinking and operating in the background of that. And when we forget that natural wholeness, then it's easy to fall into reactivity and judger. And we all do this because it's normal. But I want to note, question thinking and this work is not about positive thinking, as many people assume, although it can be sometime, but that isn't the point. It's about giving us new distinctions to think with. And so when you can begin to, I'm going to use that word again, operationalize what we're talking about, it leads to having, it's like a meta skill that you can use basically anywhere, because how we think and the mindset with which we think is going to, it's going to play everywhere in our lives. And one of the advantages that gives me when I'm working with a group or with people who don't know this work is that I can say to them, what you're going to be learning today, it's going to be really useful and practical at work. And practical is the word people use the most. But I say, you'll also be able to use it at home. And oftentimes the feedback I get is my relationship with my wife or my son or my in-laws or whatever is better because we've been using this material. And some people even post it on their refrigerators. So let's go specifically into mindset. And my definition of mindset, which I had not seen the other one that Harry gave earlier, mindset represents the beliefs, assumptions, expectations, and possibilities we hold about ourselves, others, and the world. Our mindsets are not static, and they can change from moment to moment, which is really important because as you saw on the choice map, and you don't need to go back there, but I have my handy dandy choice map here. And one of the things that we're going to look at in a moment is, whoops, wait, where does it go? The switching lane, which is the meta skill of moving from one mindset to the other and building a habit of being able to do that. So we can leave that slide up, but what I want to do now is give you an experience of the mindsets, and then we'll talk about it. And Craig, tell me how much time I have left, because I can behave like an accordion, like all of you can.
I would say Probably 25 to 30 minutes. Is that
Oh,
about right?
cool.
We started at 8:50, so yeah, we could go to 9:50, I believe.
Okay, cool. Thank
Uh,
you.
That's
So
board, is that?
I'm going to recite two sets of questions, and your only job is to notice how the questions impact you. And by impact, I mean, how do they impact your mood, your thinking, your breathing, your body, even your facial expressions? And there's nothing to do except to notice. So I'm going to do one set of questions, then I'm going to ask you, what did you get from that? And then I'll do the other set of questions. So the first set is, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with all those people? Haven't we been there, done that? Why is everybody around me so clueless and frustrating? Why bother? Now, what you could do actually to make this is to put into chat one word that represents the impact on you of that first set of questions. And I think it's obvious that those are judger questions. So losing hope, demoralizing, self-centered, constriction, hold in breath, skeptical, discouraged, lose energy, negative. Sometimes I get hopeless, helpless, depressed. Actually, this is a cognitive recipe for kvetchy. I love it. Sadness. So here's what's useful to know. I've done this exercise literally with thousands and thousands of people all over the world. And what you're saying is completely consistent with what I always get, which is kind of evidence-based about judger mindset. And if you're like those other people, I'm assuming you would also like another set of questions. This isn't the place where you'd like to be left. So here's another set of questions. But before I do that, and thinking about Deborah, who is our body-oriented person, and probably there's more than one, let's do a little breathing first. So if you would do a couple rounds of breathing in through your nose and out through your nose. Thank you. And now I'm going to recite the second set of questions. And remember, your only job is to notice the impact on you, impact on your mood, on your thoughts, on your body, on your breathing. So here's the second set of questions. What happened? What do I want? What are my goals? What could I learn from this person, this situation? What's useful about this? What is the other person thinking, feeling, and wanting? What are some really good steps forward? And what's possible? Take a quick scan of your experience and then chat in a couple of words that represent the impact of those. Inquiry-based, possibility, hope, leaning forward, deeper breaths, other-centered, me versus we, or we versus me, fertile ground, freed me up, curious, again, these are all consistent with what I always get. So look, can we go on gallery for a minute? Because I want to talk about this a little bit. So I want you to notice that, first of all, without any instruction and simply with the distinction of judger first, then learner, look how swiftly you shifted your mood. You didn't have to do anything. It's just the distinction itself put you in a different place. And that happens typically all the time. So when I said earlier, thinking with new distinctions, I really mean it, thinking with new distinctions. Now, how many of you of us found yourself recognizing the judger questions because they're personal to you. So everybody should be raising both hands because we all do. And that's why this is a theory of wholeness. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's that we all have a judger mindset. And consistent with the work in emotional intelligence, the questions we ask ourselves impact us. And that those questions, the judger questions, are more associated with the amygdala, with the part of our brain that's there for our safety and protection that sometimes can be a strength overused, as you know. But it's very important just to recognize we all have a judger mindset. And the real challenge is how to not be judger about our own judger and how not to be judger about other people's judger, because it's so easy to fall into that. I'm just going to say that we can't go too far into that. But we all have judger mindset. Now, raise your hand if you recognize the learner questions, and that should be all of us because we do. And also because you couldn't be as successful as you are if you weren't living in learner a lot of the time. So the interesting thing is, if we all ask judger questions and we all ask learner questions, what's the big deal? The big deal is that the questions we're thinking with and the mindset from which we're thinking those questions impacts literally how we think, how we feel, how we act, how we relate, and the kinds of results that we can get with ourselves and others. So once we have the ability, and you'll recognize this from adult development theory, then once we are able to think about our thinking, and we can think about, well, what mindset am I in? What questions am I asking? Are those questions going to be useful or not useful? Then you have a perspective and a tool that you can use basically anywhere in your life for the rest of your life. But it requires thinking about thinking and then having the distinctions of the mindsets. So Craig, let's do some quick, let's go back to the learner judger slide. Just as a quick summary. No, the next one. Oh, no, the next one. There, yay. So it's just, this is a backstage comment. In order to get my PowerPoint to go through the internet, I had to knock out some of the slides so that so that's what Craig is dealing with. He has 2 of those. So when we, and it's a royal we, when we are in judger mindset, we're more closed-minded, critical, judgmental. And notice that I'm saying judgmental, which is very different than judgment. We all have to make good judgments. In fact, that's what our job is. Being judgmental, a dictionary definition, is basically attacking self or others. So if we attack ourselves with our judger mindset, we end up with a lot of self-doubt, low self-confidence. If we do it externally, you know what that looks like, and it's not pretty and it's not useful. When we're in judger, we tend to be less flexible, more siloed, and we're also into the blame and shame kind of mentality. And, you know, a summary is judger mindset closes possibilities. When we are in learner mindset, when we're open-minded, curious, flexible, accepting, creative, connected, also there's personal agency involved. When we're asking questions like question thinking questions, and a responsibility could be, how might I have contributed to this situation, working or not working? That's a really useful question. And when we're in learner mindset, we're opening possibilities, which is why that road goes off the page on the choice map. So let's do the next slide, which I'm going to do really quickly because it's, but I know if you're like me, and I think you are, you like theory and you like to know what's behind particular models. And so you have all this, that when we're in judger, I'm not going to read all of these, but our thinking is more either or. It's Judger is more associated with the sympathetic nervous system. When we're in Judger, we feel like we have to be certain, we have to know the answer, and that means not knowing is uncomfortable and to be avoided, which in itself is a problem. We don't, I find myself now reading all this, looking at, Craig, let's go back. That when we're in Judger, it's more of an external locus of control. We're in win-lose in terms of Buber and relatedness. We're more in an I-it kind of relationship, not only with other people, but also with ourselves. When we're in learner, we're able to think in terms of both and shades of gray and nuance. And this is also where polarity thinking would really be useful. We're more in the parasympathetic nervous system. Not knowing can be useful. And in fact, it's the place, the fertile place from which we're creative. We're searching for and challenging assumptions, and you can refer back to that list of reasons to ask questions. There's more of an internal locus of control. It's more future focused. It's a win-win orientation, I thou, in terms of how we relate, and we're accepting and creating. So, I mean, there's a ton of things wrapped into here. I do want to say, if you think in terms of the choice map, most of the work that we do, and I mean change agents of any kind, is going to be in this arena here, which is discovering where Judger could be getting in the way, and then asking questions to shift our mindset and possibilities into learner. So I thought this would be an interesting, quick conversation. So let's put up the next slide. And then after that, we'll talk more about that switching path. So I'm just going to read this out loud, and then we could go on gallery. So consultant mindset considerations. If you're, oh yes, it is definitely an improvisational mindset. If you or your client, let's say, if your client and maybe a team is predominantly in Judger, how might that impact their success and satisfaction? And if you are in Judger about your client, and you know this happens, how could your Judger impact their success and satisfaction? And then by contrast, if your client and maybe the team is predominantly in learner, how might that impact your success and satisfaction? And if you are in learner about your client, and that includes coaching clients, mentoring clients, organizational clients, how could that impact their success and satisfaction? That's why the Federal Reserve Board brought us in, because that's what they wanted to have happen. So let's go on gallery and just riff a little bit together about those questions. And let's go Judger first. We can organize our conversation a little bit. If your client, actually, I'm going to ask you a question first, which I love to ask. How many of you have ever been on a Judger team? Raise your hand. Or worked with the Judger team? Raise your hand. Okay, great. How many of you have ever worked with or been on a learner team? Raise your hand. Okay. Notice that you intuitively understand what that means. Just by having these distinctions, you intuitively understand what that means. So let's do Judger first. If your client or their team or you is in Judger, how does that play out? What are some of your thoughts about that? You could just come off mute, because then we could talk together.
Marilee?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Sheila.
Close to new ideas, criticizing each other's ideas as the default, rather than being curious about each other's ideas.
Exactly. Thank you. What else?
Well,
Deborah.
I think what oftentimes happens is everybody gets so caught up in the, well, yes, then this, and yes, then this. And all of a sudden you're just piling on all the objections and nothing's getting dealt with because it's just one constant comment that doesn't have any answers because everybody's caught up in this.
Oftentimes it's no instead of yes.
I don't want to do
You
that.
just argue.
Thank you. Jean Marie.
Yeah, I just worked with a team where they were very siloed. So it was us versus them, and why are they doing this, and why are they questioning us, and defensive, and just poof. Oh.
And that becomes a blockage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to stop bringing up new ideas because I know they're going to be shut down.
Right, exactly. So why bother, right?
And I am going today to my biggest challenge that I deal with among clients. I teach improv to middle school students,
Oh,
seventh
that's
graders.
wonderful.
They are all about judging. They are completely in judgment mode and put downs. And it is the biggest challenge I have faced, is trying to get these kids to think in terms of yes and instead of no, but.
I'm improvising now, but I'm going to respond to you. If there's a physiological component, there's a somatic component to our mindsets, as we were talking about in the breakout. And it's fascinating to me that people intuitively understand the choice map. And you can go to my website and get it for free. I mean, it's inquiryinstitute.com, and you could just show it to them. I'm not coming up with a solution rather than asking a question, but it'd be fun to play with this and ask them if we were doing just show them the choice map. You don't have to explain it. You just ask them what they see, and then you can say, let's do improv for Judger. How would you do improv from Judger? And watch what they do with their bodies and how they relate to this. We incorporate a lot of that kind of stuff in our trainings because it's so eloquent when people start using their bodies to express their mindsets. And then the same thing with learner. And you'll discover that the way that they move and the way they relate to each other is different in each mindset. But here's the thing, do Judger first, because you want to leave people with learner. You don't want to leave them with Judger.
Of course. Yeah. We have a similar exercise that we start with, yeah, but, and
Right,
then
exactly.
yes, and see how the results differ.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
There was one, okay, we're going to take two other, but I want to move to some other stuff to give you before we end. I think Roberta, you had your hand up before.
Oh, yes.
Herb?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
I actually love Judgers. And it's not necessarily because I can be one, because I can. I can also be a learner. But I work with a lot of engineers, technical, electrical engineers, and their job is to figure out what's wrong with this, things, and then fix it. So it's like, I always, when I'm with them and they're open to it, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't, is and in the first breakout we talked about somebody who wasn't open, but is to like go, all right, let's go through everything that's wrong. What's wrong with this, kind of thing. And it's almost like they exhaust themselves to the point where you can go, okay, go take a break, kind of thing. Go pee, go have coffee, whatever. Come back. And then it's not like, and then it's like you kind of move them into, not entirely, but kind of like sometimes if it's in a good groove, you can get them into at least not downing everybody's ideas, but say, okay, we've exhausted all these ideas. So out of all the bad things that are wrong, anybody got an idea on how to fix that? And they love that because all of a sudden it just lights up another side of their little brains.
I'm glad you brought up about engineers.
They're a different breed.
Over the years, discover that engineers and scientists and IT people, and like when I've done work in intelligence agencies, they really like this material. And I think it's because it gives them a language to talk about emotions that doesn't feel touchy-feely. And so just an example of that is there's a place as part of the Navy called Submep Activity.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 200 engineers in New Hampshire, someplace. I mean, I've been there. I've spent 15 days with them in
Wow.
leadership and management training. And they loved this material. And how that engagement started was one of them found the choice map someplace, posted it on his office door, and people started talking about it. And eventually HR called us. And we have an IT team at the Department of the Treasury that has been using this with some dramatic results, both and even in designing software, but also with how they relate to internal and external customers, which I find really fascinating. And now we're going to go to Herb very quickly because we have some more to do. Where are you, Herb?
Yeah, I just posted it. Sometimes when I deal with someone who doesn't understand how they relate to the world, I use a little Tai Chi. I say, stand up. You know, help them understand how much effort they put into dealing with people.
That's great. Thank you. Let's take just a moment, because we don't want to lose learner here, that I worked with a team for almost a year that was a very dysfunctional, quote, judger team. And all we did was work with the choice map and these distinctions. And it was pretty dramatic how they turned around. So I say that to lead us into thinking, how might the distinction of these mindsets be useful in a learner sense with your clients and with your teams? And we're going to take just 2 comments because I do want to get to the rest of the material.
On learner?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, on learner. Bruce.
Well, I was working with a team at the Red Cross, and our challenge was how to motivate people in the Greater Bay Area on earthquake preparedness. So I brought 7 people together, and I said, there's no bad answer. This is a whiteboard. I just want ideas. Just throw out absolutely everything. And it was, without a doubt, there was no negativity. The challenge was enormous, but we came up with some of the craziest ideas you have ever heard of. And then we whittled them down to 4 or 5 concepts. And then we started challenging the concepts, but it was from a positive standpoint. Well, this might work better than that. So it wasn't like that was a bad idea. And it was, you know, we had 1 million people in the Bay Area get trained in Red Cross training because of that think session. And it was all because there was no barriers to the thinking.
Well, that's beautiful. And what I hear in the background is they were thinking from we, not from I.
Absolutely.
And they operated together that way.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Was there one more? Or are we going to, let's move on, because you can always, we could be asking questions and talking later too. So Craig, the next one is the choice map. And you just notice that there's a big circle around where you move from the judger mindset to the switching lane. And obviously, you know, this makes a huge difference to be able to predictably and reliably move yourself from judger to learner. All of us have done this in our lives many times, but not necessarily in a predictable and reliable way, which turns it into a protocol and let's go back and return and turns it into a way of thinking about our thinking and about being and in the world of emotional intelligence, this is where self-regulation and self-management lives. When we can notice ourselves in judger non-judgmentally, which is the key, and then ask switching questions, which we're going to get to in a moment, then we have a reliable way for self-regulation and self-management. I don't care if people don't know the term emotional intelligence. I do care that they develop it. And so this is a way for people to literally develop emotional intelligence. And so the next slide, are some switching questions. So, and there are many of them. And a switching question is a kind of learner question. And think in terms of individuals asking this, but also a team could be asking this. Am I in judger is always the beginning. And it's to be asking it non-judgmentally. As I said, it sounds so simple. It's actually probably the hardest thing that human beings are asked to do, not to be judgmental. Is this what's happening now? Is this what I want to feel? Is this what I want to be doing? How else can I think about this? Where would I rather be? If I keep going this way, what's going to happen in terms of the experiences, relationships, and results that I'm dealing with? And you can sort of logically play this out until it becomes kind of second nature, so that people can develop a robust practice of switching. And I'm going to say this for Deborah because she made me think of it, but also for everybody, that switching is not just cognitive, it's also somatic. And so we incorporate a lot of somatic practices into our trainings, because if you're all tense and upset, it's going to be very hard to switch. But if you know how to pay attention to your breathing, and you have some practices, and one that Deborah mentioned is Jinshin, which actually is something we do. And I also recommend a book by a woman named Linda Graham, who might be a very cool speaker for you, by the way. She has a lot of wonder. She lives in the Bay Area, and she has, the book is full of practices that are scientifically based about, that really helps people develop somatic awareness and the ability to switch. I just think that's so important. I want to give you my favorite switching question, which is the next slide. Regardless of what's going on around me, who do I choose to be in this moment? It's sort of like a killer app. You cannot get away from that question. It has, you just simply can't, because it's always a choice, moment by moment by moment. And the awareness of that gives us everything. So the next slide, I'm not sure that let's bring up the next slide, but I think we should just talk about it and not write notes. So we started out, I asked you some of your biggest challenges as a consultant. And so now what I'd like you to think about and for us to talk about is how might some of the things that I've said or presented or provided be useful for you with what have been or are challenging situations. And I wrote on here, it might help if you think of a specific client, past or present, where that challenge really was a challenge. So let's go on gallery again and just, what are some of your thoughts about this? How might mindset awareness, the choice map, thinking about questions we think with, questions we ask others, how might that help address in a productive way some of the challenges that you deal with? Craig, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it's kind of a comment I made earlier, but I want to turn it into a question for you. As you asked about judger mode, I made a linkage because from it to it, if I'm in judger mode, it restricts my asking out of the box questions, that it kind of puts me in a certain direction where I'm missing opportunities to ask questions that could change the conversation or uncover unmet needs and things like that. Is that correct? Or,
Absolutely correct. In fact, if you all know the work of Barbara Fredrickson, and the thinking that occurs in judger is more tunnel visioned, like we have blinders on, that means that we can't see questions or options or facts that are outside of our tunnel, but actually to be the best problem solvers, we need to have peripheral vision. And that's more associated with learner mindset. So,
and outwardly focused, yeah.
And outwardly focused, yeah, absolutely.
I'm just keeping an eye on time here too. We probably need to start wrapping up.
Okay, thank you. Don?
Yeah, I think there's a deeper discussion here as well. We're pretty much talking about changing behaviors. And behaviors come from, I think, as you said earlier, from what we believe, what's underneath why we're acting as a judger. And you can try to change that behavior, but if you've got a certain set of beliefs, whether it's about self or the world or whatever, and they may be unconscious, if you don't change those beliefs, you're going to struggle with moving out of believer mode. So I just throw that in. I try to focus on the beliefs that underlie the behavior in order to get permanent change in behavior. Because when you see those beliefs, maybe they're not true. And then for a lot of us, a lot of the behavior, the beliefs we have, they're things that we adopted in childhood. And in fact, they're not what the decisions or choices we would make at all now.
I want to add a little bit to this, and then Deborah, and that might be the end. The questions we ask ourselves, given by a particular mindset, those beliefs are encoded in the questions we ask. So if you want to operationalize that kind of change, and remember that behavior change follows thinking change. So if you want to help people develop different thinking and asking different questions, then you can use the mindset distinctions and ask them to think about the questions they're thinking about, and simply experiment with giving them different questions. And when they take on a new question, what happens is they, at least momentarily, step into the beliefs, like they step into the beliefs of learner and start operating that way. So that would just be a fun thing for you to experiment with. And thank you for bringing that up. And Deborah, since where'd you go? There you are.
I'm right here. Thank you. So whether we're talking about adults or kids, whether we're talking individually or groups, what I consistently am hearing from you, Marilee, yes, it's about being in that state of mind, that state of space that allows possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find, if I may share this quickly with all of you, is that I can't help myself, you all know that, is to really bring in breath allows you then to let go of a thought that might be in your own way. In other words, this will help you get out of your own way and open up breath, create focus, clarity, and productivity. And all you have to do is find this spot right underneath your collarbones.
Mm-hmm.
Choose a hand to cup, light, gentle touch. And you're connecting with an energy balance point that's all about gathering in the energy and dispersing it throughout. So if you want to join me, you'll do this and then bring your other hand right to the base of your sternum. That opens up the diaphragmatic breath, allows all the possibilities to just brew without being caught up in your head. And then keeping this hand here, bring your other hand to your tummy and just be in that space of bringing it into your very core. And what you're bringing in is breath and ease and calm and allowing yourself to just be.
And to add to that, and then I think we're ending, make sure that your breathing is in through your nose and out through your nose, because if you're breathing in and out through your mouth, you're really telling your brain to have an anxiety attack, which is the opposite of.
Thank you. Yes.
Such a simple thing. If somebody is anxious, tell them to close their mouth and breathe through their nose.
Close your mouth and quit talking for a bit, right?
Awesome.
We could keep
Thank you
going,
very
but
much.
I think we're ending here.
Thank you very much,
Thank you so much,
Marilee.
Marilee. Wonderful.